Some memories don't fade just because the highway does. If you've ever driven long enough to hear your own breath louder than the engine, you know what I mean. The road keeps things, sounds, names, the way a number on a mile marker can feel personal. These are 6 stories from drivers who don't scare easy, and who learned, the hard way, that the quiet parts of the night are where the road listens back. My name is Jake Harmon. I'm 42, long haul since I was old enough to sign the insurance, and divorced long enough to know better than to fight ghosts. I live in Arizona, but this happened over in New Mexico, early fall of 2016. Tuesday. The exact time matters, 2:13 a.m. I was eastbound on I-40, somewhere before Tucumcari. The sky was clear, the kind of bone-dry night where the stars look like salt thrown across a black table. I had a load of auto parts behind me and a thermos of coffee that tasted like the inside of a vending machine. It was normal. Cruise set, the dash throwing that soft green glow, the lanes empty enough that it felt like I had the continent to myself. Until it wasn't. The first odd thing was harmless. My clock flickered. Not turned off, flickered like it hiccuped. 2:13 blinked, dimmed, then bit back to full brightness. No big deal. Then the gas gauge dropped a hair. An eighth? Enough for my gut to notice before my brain did. That creeping sense that you've lost something, even if you can't name what. The CB had been quiet, maybe an AM weather station mumbling about a high-pressure system. And then, right as the reflective green of a mile marker flashed by, 237, the radio crackled in that soft, loose wire way, and I heard counting. A child's voice, or maybe just a thin voice. 1, 2, 3... The sound came in wrapped in static like it had traveled through a sandstorm to reach me. I reached to turn the squelch, and my hand stalled, because I thought I heard my own handle. Desert Fox, can you hear me? Like a question you ask yourself. The next marker came faster than it should have. 237 again. I looked back in my mirrors, and the same little green sign fell away into darkness. The desert does this thing at night where distance gets weird. You think you can measure it, and then it just refuses to be measured. I told myself it was a trick of the shoulders, the straightness of the run, that I'd just glanced at the same number in my head. The CB breathed in. 4, 5, 6. My hand found the volume. I shut it off. Silence, except for the low hum of the tires and the wind tapping the straps that hold the tarp. Then I passed the way station that shouldn't have been open. Same brick building, same sodium light staining the concrete a sick yellow, same sign outside, open. This was wrong. The rumors on at least 3 runs said it had been closed for months. Still, the lane lights flicked green like a bored attendant had just prodded a switch. I kept rolling. I told myself I'd check the DOT updates later. I didn't want to think about the coffee cooling in my mouth, the way the taste had gone metallic. At 2:13, the clock hiccuped again. The counting restarted. 1. I looked down and realized the range on my DTE had dropped to a number I didn't like. I slid off onto the shoulder to check the tarp and give my gut something practical to do. The desert wind hit me with that hot dirt smell you only get out here, mineral and dry, like a kiln. My boots took the gravel. I swung around to the back of the trailer, ran my hands along the straps, everything tight. I turned to look for traffic. None. And that's when I saw the tire marks. Twin arcs in the shoulder dust, exactly matching my wheelbase and tread, as if I had just pulled off and then pulled back on, except I hadn't. The curves were clean, fresh, like signatures. I squatted and pressed my fingertips to the dirt. The top layer was warm. Underneath, it was cooler, shaded. I stood there and realized there were boot prints too, paired and sure-footed, leading from where I stood to the trailer's latch and back. my boot sole pattern down to the chipped edge where I'd torn rubber on a loading dock in Phoenix. But I hadn't walked that path yet. The buckles on the tarp straps rattled in the wind like loose teeth. The CB speaker, even off, made that little ghost click. I turned my head. I swore I could hear the counting through the plastic, like it was rattling the cone from the inside. My mouth was dry. I went for the cab and climbed in too fast, the door thunking closed, that safe sound you don't appreciate until you need it. I told myself I should drive. Distance, that's the cure for most road thoughts. Distance and daylight. Then the lights of a way station flicked in my left window, same brick, same glow. The sign said open, but the framework holding it was rusted in a way I didn't remember. I drove past. The green lane light winked like an eyelid that hadn't quite decided whether to sleep. 2 miles later, I saw a mile marker. 237. My scalp prickled. I hit the brakes soft, just a warning to the trailer, and rolled to a stop on the line between what I knew and what I didn't. The clock said 2:13. Maybe this is where a braver man would have done something different. I pulled the brake and stepped out. I told myself I just wanted to check the tarp again. The night felt bigger when my boots hit the gravel, like it had learned my size and decided to stretch anyway. When I reached the back, the lock was cold. I don't mean cool from air, I mean cold enough that when I touched it, a numb electrical bite went up my fingers. I swallowed. My breath fogged just once, even though the desert air was still warm enough to sting the inside of your nose. On the dust by the latch, my prints again, fresh. I hadn't been back here since the first check. I turned slowly, as if I could catch a shape belonging to me that wasn't me, just out of sight. Nothing but dark road, dark brush, a night animal skittering in the ditch. The CB ticked behind the glass, and through the door I heard 10, 11, 12. I got in and pulled the truck back onto the highway. The speed built. The clock changed. 2:14. Just that simple, just those numbers rolling over like they always have and always will. The counting stopped. It was like someone folded a map the right way. The horizon opened. I drove until sun. I didn't stop in Tucumcari. Later, weeks later, on a different interstate, different state entirely, I had the CB on Channel 9 to be polite in a storm. The voice came like I'd tuned past a station from childhood. 1, 2, 3. I changed routes, but the counting found me anyway. That was the first story. The second story starts now. If you drive the mountain long enough, it starts driving you. My name is Aaron Keller. I'm 35, out of Rapid City, and I did time in the Guard before I learned that the hum of chains on tires is its own kind of prayer. This was January 2019, about 3:41 on a Sunday morning, and I was climbing Homestake Pass on I-90. The air had that metallic pain to it. 10 below, easy. The steam from my travel mug hung low in the cab before the defrost carried it away. I had chains on the drives. You can hear them. There's this careful, deliberate scrape that becomes the rhythm of your heart. You match breathing to it and let the road move under you. Little things first. There was an old rig pulled off on a patch of unforgiving shoulder, all chrome gone dull under frost. No tire tracks from the lane, no footprints around the cab, just a white beard of ice clinging to the trailer like the mountain had breathed on it and claimed it. One taillight pulsed, not flashes, pulses, in time with the cloud coming out of my mouth. Inhale, red. Exhale, red. The weather radio, NOAA, the robotic kindness you trust at 3 in the morning, chattered about wind directions and bitter cold, and then said my name. I reached to turn it up. It said my name again, the syllables flat, like it had learned them from an automated directory. Aaron, break. Now. When you've done the pass as many times as I had, you can picture the curves in the dark. The one I was approaching tightened right after a broken back section of guardrail where somebody had kissed the mountain a week earlier. I eased off the throttle. The chain rhythm slowed. Black ice, the radio said, not like a forecast, like a diagnosis. Aaron, break now. A shadow in the median powered by nothing raised an arm. There aren't pedestrians up there, not at that hour, not how it was howling. But this was a person's shape, thick with a coat, hood up. The arm went down, palm flat to the road in the universal flatten out sign. I looked at the speedometer and felt shame, instinct, and stubbornness all fight for the same inch of foot. I pressed the brake pedal down until I felt it in my knee and waited for the weight to move. The trailer gave me a nudge. Hey, I'm here, and settled. On the other side of the curve, time split. You sometimes catch a reflection in a window, and you know it's you, even at a glance. But the road glassed itself for a second. In that shine, I saw my own truck, a mirror of my truck, same number, same streak of dirt, go wide. The trailer yawed. It came across both lanes and then jackknifed clean as a textbook diagram. No sound. The air itself seemed too cold to vibrate. I felt the seat under me and did not feel the scream I might have made. My chains hissed, polite as rain. I held it straight. I kept it slow. The shadow in the median never moved. The radio breathed. Brake now. Just that, like it had only one advice in the world. I listened. The curve opened. In the lay-by beyond, a state trooper was parked sideways, with flashers dead. The windshield had a spider's web blossoming out of a point by the A-pillar, ice crystals bowing toward the steering wheel, no footprints, no engine heat. A story interrupted in the middle of a sentence. When I hit the next mile marker, my hands were so tight on the wheel that the leather pressed half moons into my skin. I made it down. Hours later, at a diner with hot eggs and thawed air, I heard a guy in a booth say there'd been a pile-up right where I'd slowed. 3:47, he said, as if the time mattered, and to me it did. I'd been passing that broken guardrail at exactly 3:41. I didn't go looking for explanations. I didn't talk to anyone about the shadow or the reflection of my own mistake. The radio has never said my name again. On clear nights, though, July, August, any place where the heat makes the asphalt smell like it's sweating, I'll be driving with the windows down and I'll hear the scrape of chains. On bare, dry road, way back behind me, like a second version of my drive is still keeping pace. That was the second story. Story 3 begins now. There's a kind of silence in rest stop bathrooms that remembers you. My name is Vic Romano. 58 now, but back then I was on the happy side of 50. Ohio boy. I'd been running the turnpike since you could smoke in those service plazas and no one blinked. This was July of 2003, 1:06 in the morning at Middle Ridge, milepost 139. They'd just renovated the building. New lights so bright they felt sterile, new motion sensor everything, the kind of modernization that makes a man feel old standing still. I pulled in for a pit stop and a bag of pretzels I didn't need. The blue neon outside gave the glass that aquarium look. Inside, the air smelled like lemon disinfectant and cold tile. I nodded at a cashier who had been on his feet too long. The bathroom door had a push bar that whispered instead of creaked. I went in. The motion sensor lights are meant to welcome you like magic. Instead, they went dim when I walked under them, turning my shadow into something with a spine. The faucet nearest me came on by itself, a brief, eager rush, then off. I picked the far sink and pretended not to care. The mirror was one long slab, no frames, no seams. When you look into a thing like that at 1 in the morning, You see everything you haven't said to yourself yet. I stood, turned my hat back so I could wash my face, and noticed something I couldn't make sense of. Not at first. It was small. I couldn't see my eyes. I could see the bill of my hat and the scar on my hairline from the time I slipped loading sod pallets, and I could see my shoulders and the back of my neck. My neck. I was looking straight on, and what the mirror offered me back was my own nape. The hair there has a swirl. I'd never noticed the pattern was so clear. I should have seen my face. I told myself it was some modern trick, that the glass had a treatment or a half-silvering thing going on. I leaned closer. The fluorescent hum thickened. The sensor over my head blinked a little red dot, like a heartbeat. Somewhere behind me, a stall door unlatched and swung, then another, in a sequence like someone counting with their fingers. I turned toward the sound. The air felt damp, a soft film settling on my skin, and when I faced the stall row, I saw condensation writing itself on the cold tile. Not a word I knew. A curved shape with a hook. Kids messing around, I thought, but my head didn't believe me. The hand dryer at the far end roared alive on its own, which should have been funny, but buried any laughter under noise. You know how a loud machine can feel like a hand on your chest? It did that. It pressed. The mirror showed the back of my head again, hat straight, neck careful, as if all I was to it was the parts that look away. I lifted my left hand. The reflection lifted its right late. A second late. Not quite following, more like remembering after. My stomach went light the way an elevator makes you light. I said, "Hey," out loud, the way you talk to a dog that might bite. The dryer cut off mid-roar. The fluorescent hum came back, softer, as if the room had swallowed a deep breath and didn't want to let it out. I turned my cap slowly. Forward, back, forward. The mirror disagreed with me, 2 beats behind, wearing my motions like an uncomfortable suit. The faucet beside me sighed itself on and off, like it was tired of being helpful. I backed away. The sensor lights chose that moment to brighten, as if I'd finally done the right thing, and in that glare the mirror found its manners. My face looked back at me. Tired, a little waxy around the eyes, but mine. I would have laughed, but it felt wrong to make a sound. I left without using the dryer, shaking my hands to fling water onto the tile like a kid mimicking a bad weather forecast. The cashier looked up with that bored interest hover and said, "All good?" I told him yes. He said, "They're saying they'll replace the mirrors." "Sensors are wrong." I nodded, pretended to understand, bought the pretzels and walked out into the blue aquarium light and the hum of trucks sleeping without me. I avoided Middle Ridge for a while after. Then the next spring, passing through in daylight, I stopped again. Curiosity is stubborn. I pushed the bathroom door. The fluorescent sound was a different pitch, like an old bulb thinking about retirement. The floor had hairline cracks that hadn't been there. The sinks were the old kind with twist handles that bite your palm if you go too quick. The dryer was one of those metal mouths you have to hold a button for. The mirror seamed, with a chip in the lower right corner, where someone had once tried to scratch their initials. Not a renovation in sight. Like the brand new version had been a dream. Or worse, like the brand new version had been real, and this was the dream the building was having to hide from itself. I walked to the sink and looked at myself in that old, honest glass. The lights flickered as if remembering me. My reflection came back the normal way, which felt less like comfort and more like being tolerated. I never use motion sensor sinks anymore. I don't like what they see first. That was the 3rd story. The 4th story starts now. I don't believe in signs anymore, not the kind hammered into posts. My name is Denise Cole. I'm 44, daughter of a coal man who worked double shifts and taught me to read a sky like a ledger. This was October of 2011, late, 11:28 p.m., in the low country folds of southern West Virginia. I was hauling steel coil, the kind that makes your rig feel dense and well-behaved if you're respectful and treacherous if you're not. Fog lay low in the hollers, not the pretty kind. This was ground-hugging and damp, lifting the smell of wet leaves and old wood into the cab whenever I cracked the vent. I'd picked up a detour on the radio like it was official, a calm voice matching the tone they use when they close a lane for paving. "Follow posted signs," it said. The GPS massaged the route to match, as if it had always known this path, and I told myself it made sense. One-lane closures, night crews, somebody trying to finish before the first frost. I turned off the main road, and the fog caught my headlights like cotton. The church came into view first. Wood siding, white-turned, tobacco-stained by years, one window lit with a bulb too warm for the rest of the air. The steeple was simple, no clock, just a cross that seemed more tired than proud. I went past, careful, mirrors tucked in my mind so I didn't tease the trees. The odometer blinked, not rolled. It blinked, and when it settled, it sat at 0, like a fresh truck, like a forgiven sin. I rubbed the dash as if it could feel sorry for itself. You make turns out there by faith, left at the mailbox with the reflective tape, right when the creek speaks louder, keep straight where the gravel looks recently scuffed. The detour signs were as official as it gets, orange diamonds with black arrows, sandbags fat and honest at the legs. I followed them. The church came back, same bulb, same moths. The fog made everything look like it had been erased and then redrawn slightly worse. I must have looped, I told myself, like that didn't boil the back of my neck. Gospel on the AM can cure a lot of loneliness. I found a station because I wanted the shape of those voices, something human in a place that felt like it was forgetting me as I moved through it. The choir swelled and then thinned to a single alto that sounded like the girl I'd been when my dad taught me to downshift on a hill so gentle it barely counted. I felt the steering wheel under my hands the way you feel someone else's hands on your back, guiding. The CB crackled. Not chatter. Coal trucks sleep at that hour unless they don't have a choice. The crackle turned into my father's handle. It was the kind of moment you look away from, not because you don't want it, but because you do. "Dee," he said. Only he called me that. "Don't you trust the next return." My mouth went dry. I whispered, "Dad," like he'd left the room to get a glass of water and would come right back if I kept my voice light. The radio went to a dead, warm hush. The road offered me a fork after another half-mile of second-growth trees and rock walls, stacked by hands that remembered harder winters. Left, the official sign pointed. Right, a ribbon of something narrower, so narrow a man on a horse would apologize for it, ran along a line of old mining sheds with roofs too tired to sag. Fog sat in that right-hand lane like a kept secret. The left-hand lane had gravel freshly laid. My GPS blinked its opinion in blue certainty. "Left," it said without speaking. My father's advice pricked the softest part of me. I took my foot off the throttle and let the rig answer me with weight. I went right. The trailer whispered as the coils settled a fraction. Branches dipped low enough to make the canvas roof murmur. The grade fell away under the front axle like a hand had slid under the road and lifted it. The lane curved in a way that matched no map I'd ever loved. I held my breath and let the truck breathe for me. When the curve ended, there was highway, not a ramp, not a merge. The highway, a neat slice of clean blacktop, reflectors bright like a well-kept promise, lay across my nose as if I had approached it from the wrong dimension. I eased the wheel and felt asphalt hum under me that had no right to be there. In my mirror, the right-hand ribbon disappeared into fog and trees like I'd invented it. I got back on the main run at a speed that wouldn't have embarrassed my father. The odometer read normal. My hands read wrong. At the first toll plaza next morning, the receipt printed me a time that made no sense. Same hour, different date, like the machine had been riffling an old deck looking for my card. That night, after delivery and coffee I didn't need, I checked the DOT updates. No detours posted. The map was a chisel-clean rectangle of routes like a drawing in a children's book, and none of it matched the fog and the church and the fork in the old mining road. I don't tell this because I want it explained. I tell it because the slowest night in October taught me to listen to a dead man on the radio and to ignore signs that don't know my name. Sometimes the road home isn't on the map, and that's the only way out. That was story 4. Story 5 begins now. You can fake a lot on the road, but a scale doesn't lie, unless time does. My name is Marco Avila. I'm 39, and the kind of father who tapes drawings to the dash with more care than I give my manifests. This was July of 2020, just past midnight, 12:22 a.m., out by Amarillo. The heat was the kind that makes your shadow feel heavy. I saw the way station lights from a mile off. Open. Green lane lights pulsing like sleepy eyes. I had pallets of bottled water riding patient behind me, all honest weight and plastic squeak. Paperwork in order, no reason to sweat. The bay smelled like hot dust and ozone, that nose sting you get around old printers and 2 new storms. The officer stepped out from a shadow that belonged to the 1990s. Not that I'm a uniform expert, but the patch on his shoulder was an old design, thread a little too thick, hat brim like the ones in pictures my uncle keeps in cigar boxes. He was polite in the way a man is when he's been bored long enough to appreciate company. "Evening," he said. "Let's take a look at your seal." "You got a coffin seal on this unit?" I'd never heard that term used by anyone current. Old-timers throw it around, meant a style of seal that snaps with a coffin lid sound. I said, "I have a standard numbered seal, sir." He nodded like he'd heard a child repeat something close enough to write. He motioned me to back into the bay. The printer at the counter rattled to life, a dot matrix with that teeth-grinding patience. It spit a ticket like a small, stubborn animal. He tore it and handed it to me. July 12th, 1996. Same time, 12:22 a.m. But 39-year-old me was a teenager the night that paper thought it was. The weight was correct, down to the weird pounds that come from pallets never weighing exactly what the math says. The ticket paper felt rougher than anything modern, like it had lived in a drawer that never closed all the way. "Break that seal for me," he said, "before you start hearing it." The bay was quiet, but for the printer sighing itself back to sleep. I felt suddenly like there was something in the trailer that needed air. I asked, "Hearing what?" He looked at me like a man looks at a clock that's been stubborn for years. "Just go on." Then close quick, I cut the seal with my knife. The metal bit was cool in the way a coin is cool when handed to you by someone who just stopped holding it. The latch popped, and when I drew the door up a handful of inches, a breath came out. Cold. It hit my face and crawled into my sinuses like winter. It was a single exhale, the kind you don't want to match because you don't want to know it belongs to you. The smell had no right being in July. A hint of iron, the clean of plastic too long unopened, the whisper of something that had been keeping still. A fog shimmered in the air, just enough to make the bay lights look like they were underwater. I shut the door. The metal rang with that convex note trailers get when you've startled them. I snapped a new seal on before my thumb could think better of it. The officer said, "Good." He tapped the ticket with one finger. "Keep this. You'll need the number." His nail was clean and blunt, and for some reason that detail stuck with me harder than the date. When I turned to roll out, the far end of the bay, where the road should have been a slice of westbound impatient traffic, was dark. Not off, not unlit. Dark, like a door shut on a closet. Then, as if the darkness changed its mind, the highway appeared again, truck noise rushing in, sodium glare pouring over the concrete like someone had just pulled a sheet away. I pulled on, blinked, and in the mirror the bay was empty, open, and ordinary as a broom. I drove with that stupid ticket on the dash for a week, telling myself it was funny. My daughter asked why it looked old, and I said they were using up old paper. She believed me because she wanted to. A few days later, I came out to the truck at a truck stop breakfast and found a red tag hanging from my mirror. Not the pink of modern violation tags, red like a stop sign in a book for children. The number printed on it matched the number on the bad date ticket. I touched it and my finger felt colder than plastic should. I kept the red tag. It's in a drawer with photos and spare keys and a coin I picked up outside a church the day I got married. Sometimes I open that drawer to look for something else, and the tag feels like it steals the heat from the room, like a small winter you can hold if you're dumb enough. I don't stop in that way station anymore. If it's lit open, I keep going, as if the sign was for someone who still believes the year is the only way to tell the difference between then and now. That was the 5th story. The 6th story begins now. The bridge hums down there, like something breathing under the ribs of the road. I'm Hallie Brooks, 47, widow, 20 years running the I-10, enough to know every billboard's voice in the dark. This was July of 2017, early morning but closer to night than day, 3:07 a.m., crossing the Atchafalaya Basin Bridge. The air sat thick, a warm cloth pressed over the lungs. The water below held still in the way that makes you believe it has a plan. There's a note the bridge plays sometimes. It's not audible so much as inhabitable. The cab joins it, the seat transmits it into your bones, and your sternum takes on a tremor like you're remembering a fright you didn't have. I drove into that note and adjusted my speed to the posted strictness because nobody needs a lecture or a ticket on that stretch. The signs come often and quick, speed reminders repeating like a prayer you haven't decided to say out loud. The first strange thing was cheap. My talk needle stuttered as if a hand unseen had brushed it. Then the list of little things lengthened. The white plastic boxes in the shoulder pullouts, toolboxes I guess, or equipment, appeared in a line that felt too regular, too identical, as if a copy machine had tiredly pressed its stamp along the bridge. The reflections in the water forgot their jobs. Lights above should behave one way below. They were late, or early, or lingering too long like a guest with nowhere else to be. I told myself to breathe. I said my husband's name. Not out loud, just without vowels, the way grief gets quiet when you need to hold the wheel tight. In my side mirror, I caught the profile of another rig easing up on my left. Same make as mine, same faded blue that reads as gray in bad light, same company decal, the identical fleet number threw a flash in the soft glare. My scalp tightened like it had learned a new use for itself. The truck drew level. I peeked without turning my head like a rookie. The windows had the reflection you get when humidity presses glass into mirrors. In that moving mirror, I saw myself. I saw my own shoulders and the tilt I fight when I've been at it too long. The me inside that other cab kept her head a little higher, as if trying to make another inch of sight over the wheel. We ran side by side for a stretch that felt like the distance between two similar thoughts. When the hum deepened and swallowed even the small sounds, the coins nickering in the console, the thermo bottle tapping a tooth against its holder, I nudged the brake. Just a fraction. Enough to signal the trailer. Don't get ideas. The other truck kept its pace, smooth and indifferent. It drifted left like a person thinking about something else while they walk. The left lane slept empty. The barrier waited ahead like a person who knows you'll eventually come to them. The other truck eased, kissed that concrete with the quiet you don't believe belongs to accidents, and slid. No scraping scream, no fireworks of sparks. It moved like a thought we decided not to have. Over the edge it went, out of sight, into a dark so consistent it felt painted on. The water did nothing. It made no splash. If there was a sound, the hum ate it before it could grow. I braked harder than I meant to. The trailer pushed back in a way that said it would forgive me if I behaved. I held center of my lane like I was hugging a wire. The bridge ahead became only the stretch my headlights could own. I told myself out loud this time, "You're fine." Sometimes a lie is a place to stand until you find somewhere else. When the hum softened enough to let smaller noises back into the cab, my phone on the passenger seat exhaled a notification, one of those dumb little chirps I'm always meaning to silence. The voice memos app had opened itself. The waveform crawled from left to right, capturing the sound. Later, at a truck stop with coffee liquefying the bad part of my courage, I hit play. Nothing, I thought, and then the hum came through. Not the engine, not wind. The bridge's own low note, printed into the recording as if it had put its finger through my cab to press pause and then play. I crossed that bridge a week later at noon. Sun dripping on the water, reason back in its chair. I kept the speed where they asked me to keep it. I listened for the hum and heard only the sensible racket of a well-run road. And still, when I put the phone down on the passenger seat, the voice memo app opened itself, and the flat line became a throb I recognized as my own heart learning a sound it didn't want. I don't trust quiet water anymore. It holds on to sounds I can't forget. Some memories don't fade just because the highway does. This is Jake again. You can drive long enough to burn through the taste of bad coffee and worse thoughts, and still the road keeps something you didn't mean to leave behind. We don't agree about what happened to us. We don't try to. Out there, on the clean line between mile markers, you learn that silence is not empty and that names don't belong only to people. I changed routes. I changed stations. I changed what I say out loud. And still, sometimes, somewhere, I hear counting. Since then, the quiet bothers me more than any scream.